Spartans, welcome to Spartan Up Podcast. We are your grit and resiliency partner. We rip you off the couch. We shake you out of bed in the morning. We come to you at least 2 times a week. And we do this because, look, everybody has the greatest intentions, right? January 1st just passed. You had all these great resolutions. 80% of the people have already given up. Here's one we got for you today. Dr. Jen Welter.
It always stuck in my head that people said that football was the final frontier for women in sports. So I just kind of had this invincibility or this belief about me that if we could change football, we could change the world.
She knew what her destination was, but there was no roadmap to get there. There was never a female NFL coach that existed. And that happens a lot in life. It happened with JFK trying to get to the moon. If you're as old as me, it happened in a book called The Message to Garcia. You get a chance to check that book out. It was written in the late 1800s. Anyway, point is, it's really hard to go somewhere when there's no map. She's going to show us how you do it. Stand up. I was going to say sit down. Stand up and watch this or listen to it. You're going to love it. We are here for Spartan Up Podcast. I am with Dr. Jen Welter, first ever female NFL coach.
Absolutely.
That's a big deal.
Thanks.
Arizona Cardinals.
Yes.
Oldest team in the NFL.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
So I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida, where football is like a way of life. I loved it. I thought the guys looked like real life superheroes and the lights were the brightest that there were and everybody would turn out. So I was like, well, I want to do that. And it was also kind of the first place in the world that I learned that there were things that boys could do and girls couldn't. And
I think there was a Vice show, there was a Vice documentary on I don't know if it was Vero Beach, but around there, that is like the spiritual home for at least for the young kids, right?
Oh yeah, and it's not, there's not a pro team close, so you kind of have 3 Florida teams. It really is high school football is the thing. And
if you're a kid, you're boy or girl.
Right. Why wouldn't you see it and love it? And
right.
I mean, you got to think about it. Look at football players. They just look like superheroes.
Gladiators,
so
yeah.
If you have any kind of, and I think every kid thinks that they're a superhero to an extent, why wouldn't you want to do that? Right.
Sure.
And so to me, it was like this magical sport.
Your family, your dad into football?
No.
Really?
I know everybody thinks I have.
I just assumed your dad was a coach or something.
Coach dad. Nope, my dad is an absolute hero. He was a medic in Vietnam. He has a Silver Star and 2 Bronze Stars. So I have his mentality. Everything is very black and white, right? I remember him telling me about fear. Like, was he scared? I remember as a little kid, I was like, Daddy, weren't you scared when they tried to shoot at you? And he was like, no, Jenny, I was mad. They were trying to kill my friends. And I was like, oh, okay. Right? Like everything was just very matter of fact. And so when I played, it was the same way. I was like, I'm not scared. Like, why would I be scared? Like, we got something to do. And so there was just this love of it. Didn't get to play until closest I got before that was college. I played rugby, which I still credit my success in football to my rugby roots because I learned how to tackle with no pads and no helmet. So when you gave me pads and a helmet, it was game over, right?
Yeah,
lights out.
Yeah, I didn't know much about rugby. We moved to Singapore for a year, and there were a lot of English there, and so the kids, we enrolled them in rugby because I thought, what a badass.
Oh yeah,
what an amazing sport. And it's I'm like, they don't have any pads on.
No.
And they're tackling like crazy.
They're tackling like crazy, and the form. I mean, now you see it. You talk about the roll tackle and stuff like that. They're really adapting a lot of stuff from rugby. And funny enough, I was just teaching at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I was teaching some kids how to tackle, and they just weren't getting it. And I literally went and I tackled one of them, and I got up and I was like, I just put you down, and I didn't even mess up my makeup. You don't have to put your face onto people. And he was like, that was cold. And I was like, and you'll never forget it. So please, when you put your helmet on, you don't need to do it. It's hips, wrap, and drop. Easy.
I love it. So you're young, you play rugby, and then
that was in college.
Got
recruited for the under-23 national team.
You were tough.
Yeah, I was tough. I was a prop too, so I was about half the size of everybody I was going up against. got recruited to the under-23 national team. Didn't make
You
it.
have any brothers and sisters?
One sister. She's older.
And so was your dad proud of it? How was your dad
Absolutely. My dad is, he raised us to not think of it any other way, right? Like, we went fishing a lot, and I caught my first blue marlin when I was like 14. He'd be like, fish doesn't care if you're a girl or a boy, catch it, right? Like, it was, so he loved the fact that I was doing what I wanted to do, and would never really stand in the way of that.
Your sister, tough and rugged?
She is a black belt in Aikido. But she has a little bit more of the big sister in it. She just got her doctorate in acupuncture. So I lovingly asked her if she got her doctorate in acupuncture to be able to put me back together, since I played pro football for 15 years. And she says, probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so then you go on to play football.
Yes.
Put the pads on.
I did. So I tried out for my first women's tackle football team at 22. It was an open tryout. And when I made it that day, I made myself a simple promise. I would step up to every challenge the game put in my way. I had no idea what I was getting myself into at that point, but it was something that drove me. I was so inspired by the fact that it always stuck in my head that people said that football was the final frontier for women in sports. So I just kind of had this invincibility or this belief about me that if we could change football, we could change the world. So even though it was a place where we really were a league of their own, right? We were walking fields to pick up glass and needles and rocks. We were pulling our cars up to the fields to be able to get another hour in. And yet the men in the game had everything. And we had this belief that was so strong that kept us going. Like, I still remember the first check that I ever got paid for playing women's pro football. Now, I say pro because we couldn't really afford the professional yet. That would require a few more zeros in what we were getting paid. It was 2004. We won our first Super Bowl, went 12-0, and at the end, I got a check for $12.
Nice, $12.
Yep, it was literally $1 a game. There's something special about actually realizing that you're getting paid to do something. It's not the dollar amount that you attach to something. I think it's the mentality, right? And if you let the dollars define you, you'll lose, because most of the things that are worth doing, if there's not a roadmap,
there is no money.
There is no money, right? So you have to believe that there's something bigger. And that check to me was so special that, that was before photo deposit. So it was an actual choice of cash it or keep it. So I kept it as a reminder of what we were all playing for.
Well, it wasn't the money.
It wasn't the money. It was this belief that, really there's no game you cannot play as a woman. Like, why not this sport? This is America's game. It's America's game. And why is it for half the population? It just doesn't make sense. Why can't we play this game? So I went on to have a really successful women's football career, 4 Super Bowls, first and second women's U.S. national team, gold medals overseas. I was on the all-world, all-star team, all as somebody who was always told she was too small, always told what I could and shouldn't and wouldn't do. And I tell people all the time, what you can't do is listen, right? Everybody said time and time and time again, like, oh my God, you're crazy. Why are you doing this, that, and the other? And I'm like, I love my brand of crazy, right? Like, my brand of crazy is exactly what's defined me. My brand of crazy was, yes, oh, you can be a football player and have a PhD. Why not? I used to laugh, and my stance on putting your head in tackles, but I used to just say I put my head into everything, because there is that, right? And if you don't have a path that's defined, then everybody's going to see it as crazy, right? Because it's never been done. Sure. So why are they going to think, oh, yeah, that's a great idea? Well, if it was, somebody would have done it before. In that
crazy
time,
until you're successful.
Right. And then they're like, oh, it's crazy success. You're like, yeah. I think that's why they say there's a fine line between brilliance and genius, right?
Yeah.
After playing 14, 15 years, I got a call from a men's pro team called the Texas Revolution. It was an indoor football team, and they wanted to meet with me. I had no idea why. I did wear really tall shoes that day. I was going to be at least 5'4" when I stepped into that meeting, though. Just telling you, I had to leave that height impression. Yeah. But they ended up asking me if I would go through a day of training camp with their guys because they thought it would be really good for pub and, we get all the cameras out. And I was like, oh, you mean like go out there and catch a few passes and run some drills and smile for the cameras? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, absolutely not. That is an insult to me as a 4-time Super Bowl champion and a 2-time gold medalist. And if I was any one of your guys on your team, I would absolutely hate it. If you want to do anything with me and your football team, either I do everything that they do, step for step, hit for hit, for all of training camp, or I do nothing at all. And in that moment, I am telling you what, I knew without a shadow of a doubt I had just shifted the course of my destiny. It was the same feeling I had when I made my first football team. And I also knew I might have just gotten myself killed. Right? I mean, I'm not going to lie. I wasn't like, I'm going to run over these guys. I was like, oh, Jen. Oh, you just spoke that truth. But I knew at that moment it was going to happen. And I ended up not only going through all of training camp with the guys, but playing the entire season. So literally getting tackled by those guys every single day. And it taught me so much. It was, I think, the most pivotal time in my life because I had gone from being one of the best in the world, right? I was the one who was setting the tone. I was a leader. I was the one who quarterbacks feared. I was that. And all of a sudden, I was this person who was scratching and clawing and fighting, to be able to get back up, right? And I learned to be a much better teammate. And I learned that, sometimes being different is actually what makes you special, right? Like I was on practice squad for a lot of the season. And so here I am, I have all this knowledge, but I'm not getting to play. And in arena, they don't have the extent of coaches that they have in like the NFL. And so I'd be there and I'd watch and I'd be like, hey, all right, hey, this is what they're doing to you. Go like next time, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, oh, she's like our little coach on the sidelines. But I had never thought of myself that way. I had never seen coaching as a possibility because there were no women coaching, right? So survived that season, full disclosure, I was good. I'm not doing that again. I'm not testing fate. I got hit every day for a year. I think it aged me dog years. But I met the guys at an event. It was off season. And you know how teams are, right? Like you see people you haven't seen in a while and they like pick me up, toss me around like I'm a football because relative to them, I am one. And they had a new head coach, Wendell Davis, former Dallas Cowboy, and it caught his attention. So he calls me over, he starts grilling me about football and the team last year. And I thought I was done and there were some things that he needed to know. So I was probably too honest. And I was wondering why this guy wanted to go toe-to-toe on, like, my football IQ. You want to go? Gloves off. Let's go. And the next day he calls me and says, all my defensive coordinator and I could talk about is how you had to coach this football team. And I said, no. So what do you mean, no? I said, oh, girls don't coach football. I can't do that. And I've never done it. And you want to throw me right into men's pro football? Like, no. And he said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And I said no, and I hung up on him. Football coaches don't really like to be told no. It's not something we take well. He called me back the next day and told me about myself. He said, do you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity? You were taking this job? I said, yeah. He goes, good. I took it for you. You're coaching for me. And by the way, you can't quit. Otherwise, the entire narrative of women coaching in men's pro football will be, we had a girl once and she quit. Oh, I'm telling you what, he read me like a book. Because though I wouldn't have stepped up to the challenge, I sure also wouldn't fail. Sure. And
what year was that?
That was 2015. So I ended up with that. I lovingly say he drop kicked me to success. Sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need somebody else who sees us for more than we do ourselves. And then something really interesting happened. So I like to say breaking glass is contagious, right? When someone breaks a barrier, it opens up other possibilities. And Sarah Thomas was hired as the first full-time ref in NFL history.
Around that same time.
Yeah, when I was coaching an arena. And as a result of her getting hired, somebody asked Bruce Arians, who is the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, if he could ever see a female coaching in the NFL. And he said, the second a woman proves that she can make these guys better, she'll be hired. So,
You read that?
I heard about it, and I talked to my head coach. He was like, well, we should call Bruce. Can you get me his number? I'm thinking, dude, you played in the NFL. Can't you get his number? But it kind of, we practiced really early in the morning in arena, so I had a little too much time on my hands. And I started wondering if I could get his number. So I went online, I found the Arizona Cardinals website and called, and I called the Cardinals on behalf of myself as if I wasn't myself. That day I was not an assistant coach, I was an assistant to the head coach. And my head coach wanted to talk to their head coach because, he'd heard what Bruce said about a female coaching in the NFL. And though it was not the NFL, there was already a woman coaching in pro football, and Bruce should know. So I guess I sounded really convincing because I worked my way to his assistant. And he said, I think Bruce would really want to take this call. Unfortunately, it was like 2 days before the NFL draft. So unlike the movie Draft Day, there's no phone calls happening at that time. I mean, they're in isolation, right? No outside world exists during the draft. So he took my number, or took coach's number, and said he'd have him call him. But I was like, totally just gotten blown off. But I was really proud of myself for picking up the phone and calling the Cardinals, right? I was like, holy cow. I mean, at that time, the closest I'd been to an NFL team was like the nosebleed section. So I just called an NFL team. I was like stoked. And about 2 weeks later, I walked into practice, and my head coach said, you'll never guess who called me yesterday. It was Bruce Arians, and he said, tell me about this girl. And so from there, he ended up inviting me out to OTAs. We met and hit it off. And at the end, he said, I don't know yet if I can make this happen. I got to get a lot of yeses. But I want you to know it's in my heart to try. And so we left it at that. And it wasn't me banging down every door in the NFL. It was really a connection. And, he moved that mountain.
So 15?
Yeah.
2015?
Yep.
Yep.
So all that happened, my entrance into men's pro football, 2014, 2015.
Let's take a break while they're pounding. I don't know what they're doing outside, but is that making its way into the... Can you hear that or no?
If you like learning stuff like this, whether you're listening or watching, how about being part of the conversation? Check out SpartanXLeadership.com.
SpartanX Leadership is a one-day event where masters of industry collaborate, connect, and learn resiliency skills for optimal team performance. Throwing spears, climbing walls, and bringing the Spartan mindset to the fast-paced world of business. Learn more at SpartanXLeadership.com.
All right. That's an awesome story. And it shows that if you put your mind to anything, you can get it done.
Absolutely.
Right?
And, sometimes when you don't have a roadmap, really what you have to focus on is being great in the moment. I tell people, they're like, did you have this big aspiration? And I was like, no. But I was committed to stepping up to every challenge, because if nobody's done it before, you don't know what those challenges are going to be. But if you commit to being great in every moment, then there's no limit to how high you can go.
It's funny. We met with the preeminent Spartan professor because I wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
And he said they didn't believe in legacy, focusing on legacy, which a lot of people, especially in the ancient world, focused on. And we focus on today in today's world. He said they focused on doing a great job in the here and now. And if you do a great job, you just get legacy.
Right.
Right? And so it just kept opening doors for you because you did a great job at everything you tackled.
Yep.
So big takeaways you and I talked about a little bit before the podcast. I love diversity is strength. Explain that.
To me, football is the ultimate place where you see that play out, when you look at a football field, you have people of every shape, size, make, model, creed, and color. You have everything from pure muscle to pure hustle working together. 11 people, very different strengths, all having to come together in a perfectly choreographed dance for any play to work, right? It doesn't work if they all look the same. So I think we forget that sometimes, right? We're here in Boston. You got Tom Brady, right? Obviously, first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever play the game. But do you think you'd win with 11 Tom Bradys?
Good point.
No, right? You need one. And so as coaches, when we're building a team, you have to find out what makes your players great, what skills they have, right?
And then pair them up.
That's right. And put them in a position where they're going to be the most successful, right? That's your job. And then to bring the best out of them by creating a unified vision, right? So you're unified in your vision and your goals, but your talents and what you bring to the table are fundamentally different, and realize that that's an asset, right? And so it's the same way with people, right? If you're in a boardroom, I like to say that, diversity is a strength. It's kind of like a diamond, right? Diamond on the street is like a rock. You would just kick it down the street and not even know any better. But the true brilliance and the beauty of that diamond is brought when you reveal each individual facet and let it capture the light in a different way, right? So wouldn't you want the same to be the brilliance of your company, right? And letting...
Or family, or
that's
any team.
Right, and letting them see things in a different way and bring things to a different table, and realizing that without any of them, or without one, you're not truly capturing the entire brilliance, right? And so that's why I say it's not only strong, right, because we're better together, but it's beautiful, right? It's beautiful in its diversity. And part of that, the other thing we were talking about, as I said, like, why fit in when you can stand up and stand out? That was something that I really learned because there was nobody I could be like, right? There was nobody I could look at and say, I'm going to coach like her, or I'm going to be like her.
No road to follow.
And so I think a lot of people, when they're the different one, they look at a scenario and then they try and just fit in, right? Like, don't stand out too much. Don't make any waves. And then you're losing that brilliance, right? Like, I knew going in, right? These guys all there, I was never going to outman a man at being a man. And frankly, they didn't need another man. They needed me. They needed my experience coming up through the women's game. They needed the fact that I was 5'2" and always undersized. So I had to fight harder and be more of a technician, because I was never going to just straight out, out big somebody, unless they're like 10, but 10-year-olds now are getting big. And so to bring that to the equation, and the different vantage point that I had too. I had a master's in sports psychology and a PhD in psychology, and I knew that I could communicate with the guys in a different way than maybe some of the male coaches could, right? So I always lovingly said, you see in football, just picture the visual, you have a big coach and a big player, and they're kind of eye to eye and toe to toe, and they're kind of going at it. I mean, we get loud in football, that's just part of the game. Well, I could go toe to toe, but I was certainly not going to be eye to eye. I was going to be more eye to belly button. So you can't really get real loud in that, because he doesn't have to hear you. But any one of those guys could lean in for a whisper. So communication is a choice. So making it very personal, making it very one-on-one, not focusing on calling them out, but being more like a secret weapon. What happens is then they want more from you. And so my approach was a little bit different in that, but it was something that they really respected. And so I always tell people, be you, right? Own exactly who you are. Own the fact that your journey has made you and has formed you, and, and own that voice. Because if you are different and you see something different, that's an asset, not a liability, unless you don't bring your opinion to the
Don't hide
equation.
it. Bring it
Don't
out.
hide it, and don't try and mimic somebody else.
It's an advantage.
It is an advantage. Being different, I always say, like, what if everything that everyone told you was wrong along the way was actually what made you right?
Yep.
I was wrong in every way. I mean, I could tell you, as 5'2", 100 and maybe 30 pounds, nobody ever looked at me and said,
You should be a
will
football-"
be, right, you should be a football player. You're my first round draft pick. You'll be one of the best in
And
the
a
world.
coach.
Right. Never happened. And yet, all of those things that made me wrong actually set me up to be the right person to do what I did.
And then the last one was love your brand of crazy. Everybody's a little crazy.
Everybody, well, especially if you're going to do something big, right? And like I said earlier, if somebody can't see what you see, they're probably going to say it's crazy, right? Big dreams. Oh, that's crazy. You can't do that. Well, most people are speaking through the scar tissue of their own experience, right? Have they had their heart broken? Has something gone wrong? Did they go for something and it didn't work out? Has the world set them up into a place where they're not thinking big anymore? And they're really not telling you you can't do it for anything out of their own experience, right? So when somebody tells me I'm crazy, I'm like, yep, and I love everything about my brand of crazy, right? I love being the one who was crazy enough to, on bus rides to away games, be reading journal articles and writing papers to get my PhD. Oh, Welter, that's crazy. What are you doctor who plays football? Ha ha ha. You can't do that. I'm like, well, did it. And so now when somebody tells me I'm crazy for, the crazy big dreams that I want to have, I just know that I must be on the right track.
Own
so
it.
love it. Own it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're awesome.
Right back at you.
Thanks for coming here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Fired me up.
You should be.
I was only going to do 100 burpees. Now I'm doing 300 burpees.
Get it. Yes.
Was that awesome? I mean, not only is she breaking ground, right? First female ever to become an NFL coach, but she's not exactly, 6'3", right? She doesn't have exactly maybe what they were looking for. But what she points out is those potential negatives actually are positives, right? What makes a team great, what makes anything great, a business, relationship, whatever, is diversity, is having folks with different strengths and weaknesses. I mean, a football team, as she points out, if everybody had all the same skills, the same look, the same this, the same that, wouldn't be a great team. My dad always said, look, if you're going to build a business, you got to find folks around you that fill the gaps you have. So that's really what she's talking about. And, I think when she figured that out, she was able to exploit those things that others were looking as negatives, and she was realizing, oh my God, those are positives, and I'm gonna run with that. If you like learning stuff like this, whether you're listening or watching, how about being part of the conversation? Check out SpartanXLeadership.com, where we bring Dr. Jen Welter and people like that on a stage. You're able to sit down with them and go a little deeper than what we're doing here, and you get to meet them face to face. So check that out. Check out our schedule. Love to see you there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.